Okay. Well, welcome, everyone. So, as you know, if you have any questions, you are welcome to pose them by speaking your question, or yeah, that's good. Great, good idea. Or simply by writing your question in the chat box. I have a couple of questions that were sent to me that I will address at some point in time during this meeting. So, welcome. This welcoming is a welcoming heart to heart. It is a welcoming of oneself. There is no teacher, no student. There is just the self, just the wholeness of being. There's one reality, and this reality is indivisible, is not divided in separate beings and separate selves. It is one wholeness. The reality of your experience is that one reality. What you are is universal self, universal beingness. You may be dreaming a separate character that you have identified with, but in your experience, as you look at your experience, you will not find a separate person. You will only find awareness, beingness, consciousness, presence. You will only find the invisible, aware knowingness, aware presence. This revelation requires your interest, which may have been until now focused on world body-mind events. World body-mind events are appearances, like appearances that appear to you in your dream. These appearances are dreamt out of you. You dream them out of your complete freedom and your creativity, the infinite creativity of the self. Now, there's a sweetness to dreaming because it's an expression of complete freedom. But when you dream yourself to be encased in a body-mind, to be frozen in time and space, or to be some mortal entity in time and space, then your dreams become unhappy because there is the thorn of mortality possesses you and haunts you in your waking and in your night dreams. So I welcome you to your true being, to your true nature. Which is not defined by thought, not defined by the body, You're not defined by the world. The world, meaning perceptions. The mind, meaning thought. And the body, meaning sensations, are defined by you. Because without the I, without awareness, what would be a thought? What would be a perception? Or what would be a bodily sensation? You are before any appearance. This you that is the same I, irrespective of the age of the body, irrespective of what thoughts were appearing to you this morning at breakfast, or the thoughts that appeared to you yesterday. It is the same I. The reality that perceives this perception right now is this I that is completely free of this perception. This perception can change, and it is changing, but the I is unchanging. Like in your night dreams are constantly changing. But you, the dreamer, is unchanging. So the contemplation is the contemplation of this I that I am, that I've always been, that can not be. I have never known I am not. How would I know I am not? In order to know I am not, I have to be there to know it. I am is absolute. I am a man, I am a woman, that is relative. In deep sleep, where is I am a man or I am a woman? And yet, although in deep sleep, I am a man or I am a woman is absent, the I am is not absent. You do not disappear between thoughts. Between thought A and thought B, I am. During thought A or during perception A, I am. During thought B or perception B, I am. I am is its own reality. It is the only reality, the one reality. which is the reality of consciousness, as I know this very moment that I am conscious. The reality of consciousness is undeniable. Whenever you will look, you will find it. If the world is real, then the reality of the world and the reality of consciousness must be one and the same, as there is only one reality. But we know that the world is perception. We perceive the world, images, a tree in the yard, a mountain, a lake, the constellation. But in deep sleep, there is no tree, there is no lake or ocean or constellation. And still I am. So although the reality of the world and the reality of consciousness are one, as there is one reality, and we know that consciousness is real, there is a subordination. The world is subordinate to consciousness. It appears and disappears, while consciousness does not. So knowing the eternal is being the eternal, that does not appear and disappear. And that is the one reality, the reality of consciousness. You are conscious. You're aware of being aware. And only awareness is aware. Anything else than awareness would be non-awareness. And given it is non-awareness, how could it be aware? Only awareness is aware. I am aware, thus I am awareness aware that I am aware. The awareness that I am does not depend on the body. It doesn't matter if the body is hungry, is tall or short, male or female, or is 12-year-old or 20-year-old. So contemplate these words. It is your contemplation that will allow the sprouting of these seeds so that they will grow within you. Be available and willing to dive into this understanding. So I welcome whatever questions you may have. Hello, Randa. Randa, you write, hi, Magdi. I have asked this question before, but it is still not resolved. Pure awareness is not a doer. When Maya appears and the projection of images begin, is this correct? If it is, then there is no personal doer. The problem I have is the objects, events, experiences that used to attract me are seen as neutral and not worthy of chasing. So I don't know what to do on the weekend. Well, you're spending your time very wisely this weekend, spending it in satsang. So if there is the question of what to do, what am I to do this weekend, or what am I to do, then what is this I that you are referring to? Is it thought? If thought is arising, that is saying what to do now, because this thought may arise, what to do now. See what to do now. Maybe I lie down, maybe I go for a walk, maybe I'm hungry, maybe I have a sandwich, or maybe I have a chat with, a friend. So this question, what to do now, can arise without any angst in it. But if the question is arising, what am I to do now with my weekend? So now I need to have something to do in order to feel fulfilled, or to fulfill some emptiness or some angst. Then the question is not just arising out of presence, it's arising out of a belief and a sense of incompleteness. So there has to be some sort of limitation or some sense of identification that veils your already fulfilled fulfillment. Because you really don't need to do anything. Things get done. There may be hunger, there may be a need to rest, there may be an interest in reading a book. It may arise at the moment, in the spontaneity of this moment. Or you may just be just sitting. And you find yourself sitting and just enjoying being. You hear the birds singing. You may look at how the light is shining onto the ground. So whenever there is a sense of angst in, what am I to do, you have to pay attention that at that moment you have this belief and feeling that there is a me that must do something or needs to do something significant or something fun in order to feel whole. When this feeling arises, besides noticing that it's arising out of ignorance, out of identification, meaning out of ignorance of your true nature, the wholeness of consciousness, you can contemplate that feeling, meaning you can go completely to that feeling. Because it's not just a question, what am I going to do this weekend, but it's also a feeling. You go completely to that feeling. Totally. You experience that feeling, you go to that feeling, every little piece of it, every little bit of it is there. Nothing is being ignored. It's all fascinating. You're fascinated by it. You're not trying to get rid of it or fix it or repair it, just to be so intimate with it that it reveals itself through and through to you. This feeling is not a part of you. Approach it with your completeness, with your total love, total interest, total presence. Don't think about it, because that's how you keep it away from you by thought. Go to it with your entire being and see what it's about. Just see it, let it reveal itself. It will reveal itself. In terms of, you're right, Randa, thank you. Usually it ends up being a sensation that the mind labels unpleasant. Yes. And also it reveals itself what's behind it, what's beneath it. Because beneath it there is complete freedom. But I'm not trying to go anywhere, just looking at the feeling, just invite it to be what it is without labeling it or knowing it. And at the same time, I'm aware that what I am is already complete freedom and happiness. Not as a man, not as a woman, not as a person, but my true nature, what I truly am. Consciousness is complete freedom, fulfillment, wholeness. I know that and I say yes to that. I say yes, I recognize that what I am. And I see what's arising. And I invite what's arising. I don't force it. I invite it to come to its complete expression. Behind it, there may be the sense that some personal vulnerability, that something may happen to me if I don't have my weekend planned with things to do. But I realize that that's a download, that's a mental and an emotional download. That what I truly am, like the wide open sky, I'm untouched. I'm not defined or determined by the clouds, by the thoughts and the emotions that arise. So the contemplation of what I am, infinite, invisible awareness, presence, is always part of my invitation to give the entire space, it's already there, to whatever feelings and emotions and thoughts are arising. So it's like a dual approach simultaneously. I'm inviting whatever is arising to arise. And I also am contemplating the innate freedom, the innate truth and beauty and fulfillment and abundance of the self that I am. So I'm going to leave that whole question about doer, who's the doer, not doer. I'm going to leave it alone because I think that what I'm addressing in your question is more visceral than the question about doership, which we can go into some other time. But let me take a question that was sent to me, and then we can go back to whatever questions you may have. So the question that was sent is, can you speak about transition from living as a human to living as consciousness? As a human, we are possessed, obsessed, subject to the I thought, the me thought, the thought that I am this person. And the feeling and the sense that I am a human. I am sitting on this chair because the body is sitting on the chair. I am sitting on the chair. And when we are living according to this entrancement, everything that we experience goes through this filter, and we experience the events, meaning our perceptions and our thoughts and our sensations, which are the phenomenal events, as impacting or being relevant to our person. And our mind becomes divided in good and bad, the good stuff and the bad stuff, the likes and the dislikes, and the shades, the infinite shades of the world, body, mind, divide our mind and our feeling state in so many different segments. We perceive ourselves and we experience ourselves as living in time and space, that we are in the world, and that the world is impacting upon us, may do us good or may do us harm. From consciousness point of view, the world, the body, and the mind are discrete events that arise to the non-discrete self, the non-discrete consciousness. So the world, body, mind, from consciousness point of view, are appearing in me. They're appearing within the space of awareness, within the aware space that I am. You cannot transition from the human to consciousness without having some insight into consciousness. Because from the human perspective, consciousness is just a concept. It's a nice idea. It's some abstract thing. But only upon having an insight into consciousness, meaning a glimpse into the reality of consciousness, into God's reality, God's truth, which comes via grace. Until you have had this glimpse, consciousness remains as a concept for you. And what seems real on the human level is the world is real, the body is real, thoughts are real, images are real, memories are real, past and future are real. Praying to God is real. Hoping that I will get a better tomorrow is real. But once you have a glimpse into consciousness and you perceive the reality of consciousness simultaneously in that glimpse, you will see the illusion of a separate reality, the illusion of the reality of the world, body, mind. It's a simultaneous understanding. So once there is that gift from God that has been offered to you, in a way, you could say this is when the baton has been passed to you. And now the baton is in your hand. And this is where you become responsible for the path. Until then, you were not, because you did not know what you truly are. But via the glimpse into the self, now you know thyself, no matter to what degree you do. It's now in your hands to live as best you can that gift from God, to cherish this glimpse, to contemplate it, to unwrap it into every possible way that you can, to see what crumbs there are in this package, every possible bit of wisdom that's been offered to you. It is up for you to explore it and contemplate it. So the transition from living as a human to living as consciousness is in every moment that you perceive the human tendency to arise, meaning the tendency of me versus you, me versus the other, or me versus a better me or a worse me. Whenever you notice that tendency, you have the option that's available to you to continue spinning into your feelings and into your thoughts, which would be the human option. Or you have the option to rise beyond that, to see that tendency, and to remain with your seeing. Because in seeing is the wisdom, is the self, is God's grace. Seeing is different from being affected or being subject to what you are seeing. There is a seeing that is so complete and so total, so peaceful, so tranquil, that is untouched by what is seen. And in a way, what is seen, what appears, comes to rest in that seeing. So consciousness is the resting ground of all what appears. And it is I, consciousness, is the resting ground of all what appears. It's like a black hole. The black hole is the resting ground where all phenomena, all surrounding forms, galaxies, they dissolve in that. So living as consciousness can be very simple when you are simply considering your direct experience this moment and not spinning in thoughts about yourself in past and future. Whatever experience is arising this moment, experience it fully and totally. Invite it to be eternity, not to be part of a story in time and space. Invite it to be a whole. Rest in and as your wholeness, your totality. Don't follow whatever spins in front of you. I know that it may be difficult at times because it feels so urgent, but that's a false urgency. There is no urgency from God's point of view, from what you truly are. All is well, all is complete, all is abundant. There is no separate wealth outside of God's grace. This whole idea about material wealth is a misconception. It arose out of the fear of death, the fear of extinction. The concern about one's future is part of this virus, this separation from God, separation from the wholeness. God is complete abundance. And it's not in dollars and cents. It's way, way, way beyond that. Dollars and cents. Gold and diamonds is nothing. It's like a candle in front of the sunlight. All that comes and goes is meant to come and go and will come and go. But it all comes and goes from one source and to one source. It only comes from God. There is nothing that comes to you from any other source. Everything that comes to you comes from that source. Whatever situation you're experiencing in your life, in every realm, is meant for you, and is meant for you to rest in presence, to rest in God's grace. And if you don't get the message, God will send you a louder message, will knock on your door stronger. And sometimes this knocking on the door may be a stronger pinch. Resting in God's grace is available to us every moment. We say yes to that. Thy will be done. I am thy. We are invited to the top of the mountain. We are invited to God's castle. And we say yes to that. Any questions?
I wonder if you can hear me. I think Maggie's sound is...
I'll take advantage of, given there is no question right now, to go into another question by Zoe. Hello, Zoe. You wrote, "Hi, Magdi. I have some questions about something you said in last Thursday's satsang. Towards the end of your response to Chris about steps that can be done simultaneously on the path, you spoke of neti neti. I am not what appears. And also the contemplation of the qualities of the self. What am I truly? Then you mentioned that finally there is living as consciousness. And you said, quotation, when you live as consciousness, all sorts of vasanas are going to start to be released. If you don't live as consciousness, then the vasanas will remain latent and dormant in your being, and you will not experience such Chitananda. So my questions are, how is this process, the release of vasanas, experienced? Do the vasanas release quietly as we contemplate and live as consciousness, and we just notice that we are no longer reacting to things we used to react to? Or is this felt physically as well with sensations in the body? Also, could you speak more about the second part of your statement that the vasanas remain latent and dormant if we don't live as consciousness? Thank you, Zoe. So we experience vasanas as contrariety, I don't know how to say it in English, as events happening in our life that are upsetting, that are triggering an emotion, triggering a me feeling, triggering a reaction. And these vasanas, they may be small, insignificant vasanas, such as somebody cutting you off in traffic, and it triggers you, and you start spinning in thoughts and feelings about it. Or they may be more vasanas that have more of a body to them, more of a mass to them, such as maybe a strong political affiliation, or a gender affiliation, identification. Could be something to do with your identity in the family, or it could be a vasana that has to do with your sensuality or sexuality, or that may be more layers to them. And life is going to trigger them, trigger those vasanas. You may have relationship situations. There may be some events in the world that will trigger your vasana. Maybe you have an idea about how the world needs to be, how everybody should be, how humanity should behave, how human beings should behave. This may be a vasana. and you get triggered when people close to you, around you, or even not so close to you, behave in ways, you become aware that behaving in ways that are not proper. You may have vasanas that pertain to your sense of safety and security. You may find yourself living in a place that is security is so, and it will trigger that in you. Or you may have issues with money and feeling insecure on that level. So vasanas they vary. There are many of them, and life will trigger them just as it's needed. God will find that imperfection, that vasana within you, that remaining tendency to contract, and will invite you to release it by presenting you with a situation that will trigger it. And as it gets triggered due to that situation, which is God's gift, your participation is important. And the way you participate is by recognizing that this is a release that's happening. This is an invitation that God has presented you to, for that emotion to start to arise. Fear maybe, that concern, that upsetness, whatever it is, to arise. Just to be released, and not to trigger in you self-judgment, not to trigger in you judging others, but to experience it and allow this experience to be fully expressed in the space that it's arising in. Simultaneously, you are being invited to notice that you cannot hold on to an image of being this enlightened being. Vasana will show you, if you are humble enough to recognize it, that such an idea, such an image, which could be vasana in itself. There is the vasana of being enlightened, or the vasana of knowing, I know. That all of that is fiction, that the self is already perfect and complete, is not becoming better, more enlightened. So at the mind level, you can understand that that tendency to contract, to identify, and to separate is a mind tendency that appears and can only be maintained by you struggling with it, by you fighting with it, by you wanting something different, but that it dissolves in your complete welcoming. So vasanas are training tools, in a way, you could say, to establish yourself more and more into consciousness as the self. They're not a punishment from God. They're not trying to say to you that, oh, you're still unenlightened. There is no enlightened human being, believe me. It is not, there isn't that message. It's really a gift, and it's a way in which you can glide, use it to glide into just presence and not into any form of judgment. And maybe going away from your question, but let me just come back to it. Yeah, so the release of vasanas depends on your perceiving what is arising from a neutral place of witnessing, of seeing, of being, without personalizing, without adding to what's arising more of the person, meaning more of judgment. Just to, it's also a process, a physiological process by which whatever is arising, it always arises as thought and sensation, to expand your being rather than perceiving it to be happening to you, perceive it that it's happening in an open space. So you step out of yourself in a way and observe what is happening from a different vantage point than from inside your brain or inside your head. So you open your head, you step into the space that's embracing this entire perception. And the sensation and the feeling and the thought are arising in that space. And that space has no borders. And because the vasana is not being personalized, then it's perceived to be just thought and sensation. The question, do the vasanas release quietly as we contemplate and live as consciousness? Also, yes. Also, vasanas can also release very quietly. You will not even notice that as they're releasing, but maybe after the fact, you will notice, oh, I remember I used to get so triggered when people cut me off in traffic. Now I don't know what happened. It's just, if somebody's cutting me off, I slow down and I wish them the best, and I wish everybody the best. Do the vasanas release quietly as we contemplate and live as consciousness? And we just notice that we are no longer reacting. Yes, reacting, yes. Or is this felt physically as well with sensations in the body? What you will feel physically in the body is more and more peace, more and more transparency. Also, could you speak about the second part of your statement that the vasanas remain latent and dormant if we don't live as consciousness? If you're not living as consciousness, then you are pursuing the feelings and emotions that are arising for you. If you feel attracted to your neighbor's wife or to your neighbor's husband, or you will find yourself pursuing that. If you find yourself gripped by fear about loss of a job or about your future, you will find yourself really feeding these thoughts, really living these emotions and acting out of these thoughts, and your action that are coming out of fear, out of thoughts of incompleteness, feed and maintain this incompleteness and even deepen the pit. And yes, absolutely, the vasanas remain latent. And in some cases, there have been people who have reached a certain direct experience of the self, but because they have not yet released the vasanic process and they are not living as consciousness, meaning they're not working the vasanas, they don't have the humility or the guidance or the graces, God's grace, to deepen their contemplation. They actually teach that the realization of the self includes vasanas, includes the human experience, and that is unfortunate for them and for the people who come to work with them. Yeah, so actually, even if you're not working on the vasanas, then they remain dormant, and they may even become for a while, maybe for a long while, they may be your living experience. Okay, thank you for your question, Zoe. So any questions, anyone? Hello, Ananda. You write, Magdi, you mentioned, let the experience of each moment become recognized as happening in the timeless. I think your incoming sound may be off.
I don't know if you can hear anybody, but you don't seem to hear me.
Oh, I don't hear you, Ananda. Mm-hmm. Ah, it may be the same problem we had last time.
Yeah.
Let me check. Okay. Okay, try now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So, okay, my apologies again. I don't know how this computer does that. I don't know. Maybe I sleepwalking at night. I come and I change the settings. I don't know.
I have to take it as grace that I asked the question and you don't.
Okay.
And it's not.
Okay.
So something beautiful you mentioned. Something about let each moment of the daily life or the actual experience not be lived in the dream, but lived as recognized as happening in the timeless, formless reality. I thought that was quite beautiful. That's my ongoing interest in sahaja. That sounds just like.
Yes. So it is rather than perceiving linear, is like a linear experience that's traveling from past to the present to the future, so that whatever is happening, you're catching like a little glimpse of it. Mm-hmm. Instead, we, especially when it comes to some feeling that arises, to sort of give it your totality. Sort of you freeze it in eternity. I don't like to use that term, freeze it, but you invite it to the eternity of being, to the vastness of being, so that you can, it doesn't just sort of brush off to the experience. You experience the quality of what is arising, especially when it comes to feeling. Stop, you turn your complete attention to that.
But now there's somebody else's microphone is on, I think.
Yeah. Let me do that just a second. Okay, it's done.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. Follow? Yes.
Yes, give it to the totality. So it's almost like a completely different experience of living or of the moment, like that it's like, oh, this is real. This is samadhi in life or something like that.
Well,
I mean,
there's only one,
yeah,
and thought is so transient. It's like a slice, out of the infinity. I mean, I'm just using metaphoric language. We usually think about things, so we're experiencing, rather than experiencing the wholeness, we're experiencing, oh, okay, that was it. That's what it is, oh no, it's that. But it's also this. So it's like we're like life is infinite, and we make out of life pages out of a book. They're like 300 pages. That's So rather than think about what is happening, meaning just a slice of what is the slice of what is happening. Look at oh, Hella, I'm just shutting the muting. I pressed the mute on your system. So rather than thinking, then it's about being. And I know these are words, but to apply the meaning, the import of what is being shared, apply it. So like in this very moment, being is. Being is. You cannot deny being. Yes. And you could say that being is taken on this form. Whatever the form is.
It's taken on the form, yeah, right.
But it's still being. It takes on, for example, let's say perception. It's taken on this perception. And if you turn your head to the left, it's taking on perception B, but it's still being. It is still being.
Right.
Experience of being. And it really doesn't matter when we talk about perception. I look at the screen, then I look at, it really doesn't matter. But when there is an emotion that arises, when there is a feeling that arises, okay? And I look at it like, I look at it like I'm looking at the screen, then I look there, then that feeling is not getting the attention that it requires.
Right.
The feeling has in it a learning. It has in it a very important learning. I mean, if you look at the table, it doesn't matter. You say, oh, nice table. There is nothing much in contemplation of the self. But a feeling has in it a contemplation. It has in it the beliefs that are hidden in it. It has in it the assumptions about what is going to happen to me. It has in it the emptiness of the feeling. So
that was me. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So there is within the feeling a, a discovery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that is available to you upon your complete interest in the feeling without a personal agenda.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Your interest in the feeling is because the feeling is there.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And it's you don't have a personal intention. There isn't a personal intention to get on the other side of it, to get free of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interest and a
Mm-hmm.
passion,
Mm-hmm.
because that feeling has in it unhappiness and unhappiness.
Right.
There is in it a veil over God's face. That's a way of speaking.
Yeah.
And so I love God, I love truth. So I wondering, like, what is this veil?
Mm-hmm.
So I look at that. And looking at it does not mean thinking about it. Because when I'm thinking about the feeling, then I go into, oh, well, she did this, he did that, and gee, I shouldn't have done this, or you follow. It's
Yeah.
totally different approach to allow the feeling and examine, the wholeness of it is different from thinking about it.
Uh-huh.
You're
Yeah.
approaching it with your complete love, not
Mm-hmm.
not with any self-judgment or any conclusions. You really don't know. You don't know what's all right, what's happening. You come to it to know it. And if it's something that you visited before and before,
Mm-hmm.
many times before, it's arising again, then it is arising because it's inviting you to maybe take a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
It's inviting you to see something new about it. So
Mm-hmm.
you are available to learning. You're available to discovery. You're available to the understanding. You're available to the teaching. You're available to the discovery.
Mm-hmm. Makes me think of Jean Klein talking. I think when he talked about listening, if you're really listening or really open to what's coming, you're in the presence already. So you're enjoying the presence while the thing arises.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And
And
so since you're enjoying presence, that's that feels better than any outcome you could think up in regards to the issue.
right. There is really no later. There is no future. There is no outcome.
Mm.
The,
Mm.
the outcome, so to speak, when we use the term outcome, is it right there in the listening, in the interest, in your interest, in your agendaless interest, your interest
Uh,
that has that you really love God, you really love truth. So the
mm.
interest comes from your love for truth. It's not an interest in, oh, what can I get out of it.
Right.
And at the same time, there is an understanding that everything is God's grace, and whatever everybody else is doing or acting or reacting
Mm-hmm.
is part of their path.
Mm-hmm.
Y- y- Hitler could not avoid being Hitler. He couldn't.
Mm.
He couldn't. He had to live that,
Mm.
the misery of it, and all the misery that he created around it.
Mm.
It's unavoidable. Everybody had to live that. The mind cannot explain it,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but that was part of everybody's path,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because even out of our ignorance, meaning out of our interest in our personhood and our disregard for others,
Mm-hmm.
we cannot avoid being that and living that. until the light, God's light, grace comes upon us. But until then, we cannot avoid, and we will act in hurtful way, and we will hurt inside ourselves. We may bury it, we may push it as far away, as deep as we can, but it'll still be there, burning within us. And we may create also around us some turbulence, and other people will experience this turbulence, and this turbulence that they are experiencing is part of their work, part of their path, part of their karmic path to hopefully embrace what is happening and use what is happening as their stepping stone towards God, and not as a stepping stone towards them having their personal problems resolved. If you're interested in your personal problems are going to be maintained because you're maintaining them. and you're maintaining the other. You're maintaining the other's problem, the other who's maybe miles and miles away from you. You're not helping her or him. We are connected. We are one. When you step out of your maintaining your condition and your beliefs and your feelings, when you're helping the other to step out. It's magical.
Hey, some words come to me. Helping the world is an inside job.
Yeah. Yeah, right. That's right.
You know, I have a friend named Peter Baker. Do you know Peter?
No, not
He's been quite a presence on the internet and some discussion groups that I've enjoyed, and I've found him to be quite a mentor in some ways. He really seems to understand Buddhist emptiness way more than what I understood. You know, not that that's where I'm going with my with my life, but he recently. I checked in with him because I hadn't seen him in a while, and he says, I don't think it's dementia. I don't know what it is, but I can't put words together anymore. He wrote a pretty cogent, understandable, but he couldn't say much. He said, this is about as much as I can say. And I felt such a sadness that him as a vehicle of wisdom to the extent that he could feel. I said, well, how do you feel? Do you feel an underlying okay even though this is happening? And he says, I couldn't have described this. It's unimaginable how the confusion of my mind with my illness, various domino effect of illnesses. So this is very similar to what happened with John Klein, and I've always pondered it for years, how he, you know what I mean? The body mind of John Klein was the most finely tuned thing in the universe as far as I could see.
You know, the teaching is not so much a body mind. The silent teaching.
Yeah, right.
The presence, and it's not the presence of a person, it's the presence of the self.
So when a body mind, deteriorates, or I guess it's similar to a body mind dying. It doesn't mean the self is gone, certainly.
Well, it's Ramana, for example, in his old days, I have never met him, or I wasn't there, but my sense of
you were just being born.
of the presence, sense of the presence is it doesn't depend on the body,
yeah,
on the state of the body.
Right.
It doesn't depend on the state of the body-mind.
Yes. If there's short circuit in the wiring up there, we call it whatever, dementia or damage from a stroke or whatever. It's kind of like the rubber meets the road there in terms of, we're consciousness, we're not the mind, we're not the brain. It's appearing in the consciousness, and yet this wonderful friend is drifting, in terms of cognitive ability, is drifting into
All body-minds are going to.
why make a big deal why make a big deal of it, I suppose you could say.
That's the destiny of body-minds. But nobody dies healthy.
With that.
All bodies die like bodies die, they deteriorate.
Maybe it's something that I'm wanting some kind of a sharp answer. I mean, a clear answer than there really is, because it's so mysterious in a way.
What is the mystery?
Well, you gave the example of Ramana, and there you can see it. You could see, if you look into the story of Ramana and his life, you could see the self was not affected by the body. You know what I mean? He was clear. He was a clear.
Yes.
The channel was still open, so to speak.
Yes.
But then when I see it in other situations, like Jean Klein, he had the stroke, and then some people said he was just parroting the words, he was actually giving talks still and saying, the self is something, and they didn't know if he knew what he was talking about anymore, or if he was just repeating from a lifetime of speaking,
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So what if Jean Klein was speaking gibberish because this was what the download of the words was at the time, due to how the state of the brain. Doesn't matter.
Right.
We can hear the gibberish and say, "Oh, interesting. This what this body mind now is its capacity of expressing. Is incoherent." But that doesn't refer to Jean Klein, the real Jean Klein, the true what Jean Klein is. It's not the words that he was using or the words that he was saying.
What comes to mind is the image that you use sometimes.
I'm sorry, I want to stay with that for a minute.
Okay.
You're moving too quickly.
Okay, got it.
The words refer to what's beyond them. But what's beyond them does not need the words. If you remain at the word level,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you're dependent on the words. But you can sense what's beyond the words.
Mm-hmm.
And what's beyond the words is not out there. Named Jean Klein or named Ramana.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not in my supposed objective world.
It's not in the objective world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's the very being.
Oh, they sing an image like a flower blooms and then it goes. So you see it in another being or through some portal, like I call it John Klein, maybe.
Yes. What you see is your very self. What you experience is your very self. And that can happen via some words you hear Jean Klein uttering. but it's also happening invisibly. You wouldn't be where you are because you heard John Klein speaking. John Klein's words, my words, other people's words are a drop in the bucket compared to the unformed, unspoken.
Yeah, the actual.
Yes.
Mm. Mm.
Which is the I am.
Mhm.
So notice the wordless, the formless. Otherwise, there is just a spin of the mind. It's a very habitual way in which the mind pulls us away from presence in a way. It really doesn't, but it seems to veil the presence with its whirl, with the whirl, the dance of the dervish.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right. And one place where that obviously can come up is in seeing the loss of someone. That's all. It's the same. It's the same dance. It's just it's maybe a little subtler form of Vipassana, grief or something like that. But it's still the
It's
dance of.
not the realm of loss and gain and grief and
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
rejoicing. It's an okay realm. It's a sweet realm as long as we don't assume that this realm
mm-hmm.
is what defines us. As long as we are not taking any gems of reality out of that realm, because that realm has no gems of reality.
Mm-hmm,
But it's okay. It's a realm of
mm-hmm,
those grieving.
mm-hmm.
But we don't get to know the I am from that realm. The I am is not from that realm. The I am is what perceives that realm or shines as that realm or appears as that realm.
Yeah,
So
that's
when
clear.
we're experiencing, oh my goodness, what's happening to another, we have to be really watchful because another always refers to a separate me. At the same time, we can
Mm-hmm.
empathize with somebody's situation without separating ourselves.
Yes.
It doesn't go into the feelings; it just goes into a certain sweetness.
Mm, 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 mm. Like, like actually, the beauty of the self and the love of in the self. Those qualities, maybe.
In the realm of forms, it appears in so many ways. It doesn't always appear as a rosy, healthy, vibrant body mind, but it does not appear as ignorance. Ignorance, separate me, separate other. That is just the dream, the illusion.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
add-on virus.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
That's good.
very lovely to be with you all. Thank you for your questions, Ananda. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next Thursday. I think we'll be here next Thursday, and then I think we'll be out to Costa Rica after that, or the weekend after that. Okay, see you soon. Very lovely to see you. Namaste.